So let's take on two legal updates. First, Judge Aileen Cannon blows it again. And second, Governors Abbott and DeSantis are not only engaged in cruel, callous, heartless political stunts, but they might also be violating federal law. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So let's take on two legal updates. The first one is Judge Aileen Cannon, the Florida judge who was appointed by Trump and was confirmed by Mitch McConnell's Senate after Trump lost the presidential election. Well, she blew it again, and she issued a 10-page ruling basically saying, I'm going to leave my stop work order in place so that the Department of Justice, the federal prosecutors, cannot investigate Donald Trump's crimes involving his theft of and unlawful concealment of highly classified government documents. But I'm not going to go through her 10-page ruling because there is so much to dislike. I want to focus on just one thing she said, which I think kind of knocked the legal wind out of so many of us. I'm going to read it first, and then we're going to translate it into English. She says on page 3, the motion filed by the government primarily seeks a stay of the September 5 order insofar as it temporarily enjoins approximately 100 documents marked as classified. In other words, her earlier motion said, you cannot criminally investigate Donald Trump for the 100 classified documents he had unlawfully, that he had no right to, that he stole from the federal government. She goes on, in isolating the described documents, those are the classified documents, from the larger set of seized materials, the motion effectively asks the court to adopt the following, that the approximately 100 documents isolated by the government are classified government records. Wait a minute. The federal judge is saying that the 100 documents that have been identified by the government, that bear classified markings, that were recovered from Mar-a-Lago, are not classified documents? She's not prepared to accept that factual representation from the government. Heck, she saw the pictures of some of the classified materials in classified folders bearing classified markings, pictures that were taken inside Donald Trump's office at Mar-a-Lago at the time the FBI was conducting the search and documenting what they found. No, Judge Cannon is not prepared to accept that these are classified materials. That is so arrogant and reckless and out of touch with reality and dismissive of our national security interests that it leaves you dumbfounded. You know, frankly, Judge Cannon continues to expose the fact that she has no business being a federal judge. And the Department of Justice has already indicated it will appeal her ruling in its entirety to the 11th Circuit. Yes, people have observed that the 11th Circuit has 6 Trump appointees and 5 non-Trump appointees sitting as appellate court judges. So it's anybody's guess as to, first of all, which 3 judges will be selected to hear the appeal of Judge Cannon's horrific ruling and how they will resolve it. If they're honest brokers of the law, I think they will overturn the ruling of Judge Cannon and reinstall some sanity into this process. But we'll stay tuned to this one, friends. Now let's turn to the second story, which involves a level of cruelty by Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis cruelty toward their fellow human beings that just sort of leaves you speechless. You probably heard that Abbott and DeSantis have been taking busloads and plane loads of asylum seekers, migrants, and shipping them off to far-flung parts of the country and dropping them there with no resources, no help, no assistance, no contacts, no information about what may happen to them. And when I heard some of these asylum seekers being interviewed, there is a federal law that leapt to mind: kidnapping. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, kidnapping involves, hitting somebody over the head, tying them up, throwing them in the trunk of the car, driving them somewhere against their will and without their consent. Yes, that is kidnapping. But there are other forms of kidnapping. And in the federal law, there's something called kidnapping by inveiglement. Fancy word, funny word, unusual word. We don't often hear or use the word inveiglement, but it's part of the federal law. So, as we often do, let's go to the big, ugly blue book of federal laws, the United States Code, crack it open to 18 United States Code section 1201, and talk about the crime of kidnapping by inveiglement. Here's how it reads, very short. Whoever unlawfully seizes, confines, inveigles, decoys, kidnaps, abducts, or carries away any person across state lines or in interstate commerce, as the phrase goes, is guilty of kidnapping. Kidnapping by inveiglement. Okay, what does this word inveiglement mean? It means to lure or lead astray or entice by false pretenses or deceitful means. Let me give you an example. And I'm going to use actually a concrete case. A few years ago, there was a military criminal prosecution which was affirmed on appeal where a young female soldier was enticed to get into a car by a fellow soldier under false pretenses that he was going to take her back to the base, the military post to which they were assigned, and he didn't. He lured her into the car under false pretenses and took her somewhere she had not agreed to go. He was convicted of kidnapping, kidnapping by inveiglement, not by force, and that was affirmed on appeal. That's just one example. The law books are full of cases that have been affirmed on appeal when the conviction was for kidnapping by inveiglement. Now, here's why my mind went right to the federal law of kidnapping by inveiglement when I heard what Abbott and DeSantis were doing. They picked up these asylum seekers, they lied to them, made them all sorts of promises, put them on a plane, flew them up to Martha's Vineyard, and dropped them with nothing for them once they landed. I heard an interview with one of these asylum seekers, one of these migrants, and here's what he said. He said, we agreed to get on the plane to do this because we were promised food, shelter, 90 days of support, English lessons, help filling out work permits, etc. And when they landed and were pushed out of the plane, they got nothing. None of that. They were transported across state lines by the Abbotts and the DeSantises of the world, these cruel, heartless little men. They were lied to, and they were moved from one place to another. That is kidnapping by inveiglement. That violates federal law. Let's hope that the Department of Justice opens a criminal investigation into Abbott, DeSantis, and anybody that participated in this conspiracy to kidnap these asylum seekers, these migrants. I don't want to end on a sour note, friends, but I wonder if the Abbotts and the DeSantises of the world, corrupt governors, look at what's going on in Washington and say to themselves, it's not like any of the ruling class criminals in Washington, D.C., the political criminals, the elites, the wealthy, the well-connected, are being held accountable for anything. Not for one single solitary crime has accountability come for any of the ruling class criminals in Washington. And maybe Abbott and DeSantis like their chances, because if they're not going after and locking up the people for the insurrection and for the theft of classified documents and nuclear secrets and other crimes, well, why would the Department of Justice go after them for, just shipping some asylum seekers around the country? Let's hope justice comes for all of them, because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.